Many strange and interesting characters have attended Hutchinson Community College over the 96 years since its founding back in 1928, but none have captured the imaginations of the students quite like Jojo. Infamous for his bizarre and enigmatic behavior, many people have written him off as nothing more than a figure of folklore, like Bigfoot or Sasquatch. But for the brave students who were living in Kent Hall during the 2023 fall semester, Jojo was very real. Today, I, Paul Holmes, will be interviewing one of these students, none other than Jojo's former roommate, Mr. Thaddius Butler. Hello there, Thaddeus. Thanks for being here today.
Hi, hello. Very nice to be here today.
Well, it's good to have you. So, Mr. Thaddeus, a lot of people are very curious about your experience. What was your first impression of Jojo when you met him last year, and what was it like being forced to interact with him on a regular basis?
Geez, my first impression of him? Okay. Well, I guess a little bit of context. When I had gotten here, the first move-in day, Jojo was not my intended roommate. There was somebody we had been emailed way earlier in the summer, say like July, and we were informed about who was supposed to be our roommate so we could get in contact. I was not able to get in contact with my roommate, and he just didn't show up for move-in day. He didn't show up, so for that night, I got another roommate who moved out the next day, and in his place was Jojo. I mean, I didn't really think a lot of Jojo. It was first impressions, and I was very shy. But I guess I did kind of get a bad vibe off of him. It might have been not necessarily crusty. It was the way he carried himself. I was very off. I like to, when I tell these stories to my friends, I like to call it the Nosferatu walk. He walks with his shoulders very high up. It was very strange. I mean, on a day-to-day basis, anytime he was in the room, I just didn't feel like I could do anything. He had a very dominating presence in a kind of way, in the way that someone like me wouldn't really. I didn't feel like I could really do much around him, so I just kind of tried to make him as not pissed off as possible. I mean, some common interactions at night. He wouldn't really let me sleep a whole lot, just because he'd have the lights on and he'd blast loud music and be loud. It was very, very troublesome, and it interfered with my school life quite a bit.
All right. Now, I think it's safe to say that Jojo was a man who had a very unique way of expressing his emotions and was well known for his unconventional methods of social interaction. As someone who regularly associated with Jojo, there's no doubt that you saw some things. Would you mind sharing some stories about your most memorable interactions with Jojo?
Most memorable interactions? Oh, geez. I think probably the first time a group of people around me that weren't Jojo interacted with Jojo, myself included. It was me and some of my friends. There was this girl, who I will leave unnamed. She's very short, and we were just chilling out in the lobby, and Jojo walks out into the lobby and just lasers in on her. And I don't remember how exactly he said it, but it was something along the lines of, "You look like a teacher." Judging off like the way she was dressed at the time, and it was a very confusing moment. I mean, other interactions. There were like unspoken interactions. One time, a girl who I was fancy with, we were napping in my bed, and Jojo walks in and begins to play TikToks very loudly. Other interactions. I didn't interact with him a whole lot. There was one time he asked me how I would feel if I was in a mental hospital, and that was very odd. There was one time he I was trying to sleep at like 2 in the morning, and I woke up to like a presence on me, and JoJo was like side hugging me and saying like apologizing for being a bad roommate, and I was like half asleep and very distressed. It was very distressing. I think it's safe to say narcotics had affected him in a very permanent sense. But you could always recognize him because he always had his hoodie up. He was always sagging his pants. You'd always be able to see his underwear. And like I said, he walked like Nosferatu.
Well, that is truly harrowing. Now, as I'm sure you are aware, in the past, JoJo has been heavily criticized by his peers for some of his unique hobbies and recreational pastimes. And you touched on this a little bit, but how do you think these hobbies might have affected the people who had to live on the same floor as JoJo? And what effects do you think these hobbies had on his overall behavior?
I see what she's saying. Well, I am not one to judge a person, to a certain extent, to judge a person for what they like to ingest, to a certain extent. However, I do recall a time after classes when I had walked all the way over from the classroom to the dorms, and quite a bit of ways from Kent North, the hall in which I live, I could smell marijuana. Very strong. By the time I had opened the door into Kent North, the smell of marijuana was so strong, I could feel it moving past my skin every time I took a stride. Now, not really being exposed to having a roommate of this status, was not expecting when I opened the door to realize that the source of all the smell was my room. It appeared that JoJo, or I guess the official term would be Joseph Smith, had hotboxed my room. And my room continued to smell like this for upwards of 2 to 3 weeks.
I see. That is some truly profound insight. Being roommates was no doubt a very stressful experience for you. Do you think that being around JoJo might have had any lasting psychological effects on you?
Yeah, it's safe to say it did. JoJo was, and Mark that he was nearby was that like he'd be playing music loud as all be. Normally hip-hop music. And of course, I'm not one to judge. I listen to quite a few hip-hop artists myself. However, that's how I was always able to tell that he would be like in the room, because the hip-hop originating from outside the door would always notify me he was there. Once he had left after certain events, anytime like hip hop music would come past the door, I would I would kind of snap to alertness, which I think is a symptom of some form of PTSD, but I'm not sure. Also, I do kind of like tense up a little bit anytime the door unlocks. There's also some other responses, and I do get a little uncomfortable when there are girls in the room, based off a previous experience where I was laying, I think, trying to take a nap in my room, and JoJo and a woman, came in, and I expected them to do what me and one of mine had done previously and just, cuddle and maybe take a nap or something. They did not. I received no warning of what they intended to do, and by the time they were already doing it and I had realized they were so deep into it, I just kind of had to hide under my blankets. So I do get a little uncomfortable when there are girls in the room as well.
I'm very sorry to hear that. You are so brave for going through all of this. To close things out, there have been a lot of interesting developments with JoJo ever since he left HCC. Our sources tell us that he was in Alaska for a while, but has recently gotten into an altercation in Utah. JoJo has his whole life ahead of him. In your opinion, what do you think is next for JoJo?
What do I think is next for JoJo? Well, I think I've heard similar information. I mean, I don't know, because I'm not even sure his name is actually, well, Joseph Smith, supposedly. I mean, who knows? He might end up all the way in China. He might end up in the front lines of some war. Who knows? Currently, I believe right now JoJo is in some prison for presenting fake IDs. So JoJo might not even be JoJo. He might be Frederick Smith, but Frederick Smith over in DC, selling narcotics. Who knows?
Well, thank you for your time, Mr. Thaddius. Although JoJo was only with us for a brief time, the effects he had on those who knew him were enough to cement his legacy as one of HCC's most infamous students.